So, I want to talk about a couple of things related to WrestleMania. That is the fact that, one, who is going to main event night one of WrestleMania? And two, um, basically, we're going to have two matches, two Fatal 4-Way tag team matches at Mania with the possibility that the winners get shots at the tag team titles. I want to talk about those two things. First of all, the question of who will main event night one. Now, there is rumor and speculation, even though this has been pretty much downplayed for right now, that Charlotte and Rhea will main event night one. And this is pretty much backed up by the fact that Charlotte, went on record in a recent interview and said something along the lines of, Rhea had worked too hard for this moment, and that by default, being the winner of this year's Women's Royal Rumble, that, traditionally, that means she should main event, close out WrestleMania, at least night one of it. And, honestly, I don't disagree with that. There is logic behind that. You want to basically put emphasis on how important the winning the Royal Rumble is to the individual that does it and gets that opportunity at Mania. So you want to try to back up, that right there with, having the main event against the champion. And, I don't see nothing against that. I don't see any dislogic against that and everything, despite, the build for it has not really been much. I mean, they try to put some build into it on Friday, with Rhea, saying what she did and, them having the brawl and all that. So, I can, again, I do agree that, the build hasn't been that great, but still the logic from an importance, prestige standpoint is, the winner of the Royal Rumble match should always main event WrestleMania in some capacity. And again, I don't disagree with that. I really don't. I don't disagree with that in any way, period. I don't disagree with that. But with that said, though, a lot of people, including myself, feel that, Rhea needs to squash Charlotte in this match. And that by doing so, it would establish her as the dominant force a lot of people now see her as. I mean, a lot of people look at her as the new Joni Lauren, China, if you will. They look at her as the new China for a new generation. And you even have Kofi Kingston in an interview saying that she should go after men's championships. She should have intergender matches, go after men's titles, do what China did, over 20 years ago, if you will. And I don't disagree with that possibility or that logic, whatsoever. I don't disagree with that, in any way, shape, or form. That she should, take that next step. And by squashing Charlotte in a manner that is akin to, I should say, to what Brock did almost a decade ago to John Cena at SummerSlam, I don't think anybody would have a problem seeing that. And they realized that it would establish, Rhea as basically everything that people hype her up and claim her to be, which again, I'm all for. So the question though is, should her and Charlotte main event night one? People are saying that there are backstage politics being played into it to try to make it happen, but we'll see. I think the most logical thing to do, if anything, and I don't think anybody's thought about this, but I think the more logical thing to do is you have Bianca and Asuka on night one. You have them go for their title. And then on night two, the final two matches should be the Royal Rumble winners against their respective champions. You have Rhea and Charlotte and then as the second to last match on the card, turn that into a squash if you want to, and then you follow that up with Cody and Roman, and there you go. And what does that do? That opens the door for what a lot of people feel could be the main event, and a lot of folks going to reports within WWE are pushing for, because of everything behind it, storyline and all that, and how it connects to the main event that closes out all of WrestleMania the following night, and that's the Usos versus Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. And, when you look at that match, honestly, I don't think there's no disagreeing with that whatsoever either. I think, honestly, that has a lot more story behind it, a lot more meaning behind it, and all that. And, it would be for Triple H a way to significantly show that, unlike Vince McMahon, he favors tag team wrestling to the point that he's willing to let it main event night one of WrestleMania over something like Rhea and Charlotte, who, logically, whether people agree with it or not, should main event night one because of Rhea's Royal Rumble win. But I look at the fact that if you want to put that on a platform, as I mentioned, then I think it should go back to back with the Undisputed title on night two. Kind of set the stage with possibly new champions being crowned to usher in a new regime, officially a full-fledged new regime, takeover, if you will, of WWE main roster product. You have it done. You exemplify that by having the last two, matches featuring the Rumble match winners competing and having them go over on the final night of Mania. I think that's probably something that could happen. Maybe they should consider, especially if a lot of people are pushing for the Usos versus Sami and Kevin to main event night one. So, honestly, it's a toss-up as to exactly what's going to happen. But if I was putting this together, match card-wise, I do agree that one of the options they could go with is opening night one or night two with Rhea squashing Charlotte, thus setting the tone for Mania. Or I would have them on night two double main event along with Cody and Roman. And I think, honestly, I would close out night one with the tag title match. That way, from a storyline perspective, you have possibly the, inevitable happen, which is being rumored to occur for the tag titles. And and basically from a storyline perspective, you have that play on the mind of Roman that, okay, the Bloodline just lost the tag titles. The longest reign in tag team title modern history for the Usos is over. You have that mess with his mind mentally to the fact that he could possibly follow suit and everything with, when it comes to Cody, and it would get people speculating, whether or not, WWE would pull the trigger. Would they finally do it? Or would they hold off, if you will, until later on? We'd have to see and, pay attention. We'd have to see eventually what they do over, as we get close to the Mania. But, yeah, I think logically, booking-wise, I think you have to go with, in my opinion, you have to either open either night with Rhea and Charlotte and have Rhea squash her, or you have to double main event on night two with Rhea and Charlotte and then Roman and Cody. And then you leave night one open for, for the Usos and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn to close out with. That's just my opinion. But with that said, there's something else going on at WrestleMania that's gotten people's attention. And that is two fatal four-way tag team title matches for the women and the men, where potentially it looks like the winners are going to get a tag team title shot, in the near future based on these matches, which are being dubbed WrestleMania Tag Team Showcases. And I was watching a bit of Just Alex Central, Alex's World breakdown of the current card as it is right now, or it's going to be eventually down the line before we get to Mania. And Alex basically, said, from his own point of view that he hopes and prays that after these matches are done and the inevitable winners, which he believes for the women will be Ronda and Shayna, become tag champs, that he's hoping they just do away with the titles. Just be done with the women's championships and all that. But he also said that he looks at these tag team matches on both ends of the spectrum, and he's like, to him it feels like it's a Vince McMahon move. It's a Vince McMahon booking, if he's ever seen it. The same with Brock Lesnar and Omos, if you will, as well as a bit of the 6-woman tag match with the return of Lita and Trish. And here's what I have to say about that. First of all, like I said, we shouldn't believe everything we hear. We shouldn't, as I've said multiple times, we shouldn't let our fear and a paranoia about what Vince did in the past, live rent-free in our heads. JD shouldn't allow that to happen. Alex shouldn't allow that to happen. Nobody should. And that's a fact. That is a fact. But I will admit this, because I was thinking about it too. Everybody says this feels like, Vince booking is resurfacing. It feels like Vince is back. But we all know, if we pay attention and not ignore it, Vince, legally, can't get back, legally cannot, go into creative anymore because of the SEC agreement. That basically states that, he can only be there to help, facilitate a sale of the company, which obviously they're taking bids on in the next month or so, as well as try to facilitate future TV rights deals for the company. And, that's about it. But I'm not going to argue that he doesn't have an influence. Because the way I look at it, Triple H is just one man, so he's got to hand off, booking duties for some of his shows and some of the matches and storylines to other people. And one of the primary people that was always, side by side with Vince, sort of like his right-hand man or left-hand man, outside of someone like Kevin Dunn, was Bruce Pitchard. So I would not be surprised that Triple H has handed off some booking duties of Monday Night Raw, to Bruce Pitchard. And Bruce, learning under the learning tree of Vince McMahon, and probably, maybe in a sense, missing Vince McMahon's way of booking and storytelling, is probably behind some of these matches. Which is why you pretty much feel like, oh, it's Vince, booking these matches. It's Vince back in creative. Not necessarily. I think Vince, whether we like to admit it or not, is a smart man and everything. And if he did want to have some say in, what happens creatively, to make him feel like he's still there, still making decisions, I would not put it past Vince or even Bruce to communicate back and forth, and by default, have Bruce book a lot of Vince's ideas, thus finding a loophole around the whole situation with the SEC agreement. I could be wrong, and maybe other people are right, but again, it's that agreement, that legal binding agreement we know of, we've heard of, if you will. So I'm not saying that Vince doesn't have an influence. I'm just saying that I think it's more Bruce taking what he's learned from Vince, more so than Triple H, and applying it to what we see on television, which is why we're seeing a lot more Vince-inspired booking, if you will, with certain stories and characters and matches. That's what I think. Because, again, Vince, he cannot legally, honestly, he cannot legally, do anything more than just be there to facilitate a sale, facilitate future TV rights deals as he says he wants to, or he says he's only there to be there for. And obviously he cannot, make it too suspicious that he's not working, beyond the regular hours, that people say he's now working. Because a lot of people are saying, hey, he's not, working long hours into the night and into the early morning and all that anymore. He's working average hours, like 8 to 12 hours, and that's it. So obviously he probably realizes, and with the people and with certain team members around him, realizes, he can't give off, the vibe of, hey, he wants to do more. So he's probably working, he's working vicariously, if you will, through someone like Bruce. You probably heard that Triple H is putting Bruce in charge of Raw at times, maybe for the whole show or for certain aspects of the show. And he's like, Bruce is back in charge. Get him on the phone. And Bruce is like, yes, Vince? Bruce, I hear you're back in charge, of Monday Night Raw, or at least parts of it. And he's like, yes, I am, Vince. And he's like, well, Bruce, let's get back to business as usual before I left. And don't make it too suspicious that you're getting the ideas from me. That's probably what's going on. And Bruce is probably like, of course, Vince. Anything you say, Vince, you got it. So maybe that's what's going on. We don't know. But if I was to point the finger of blame towards anybody for the Vince-inspired like booking throughout WWE in the past several months, I have to say it's Bruce. I have to point it towards Bruce. Because again, we all know, that legally Vince cannot cannot book, he cannot do anything beyond be there for the facilitation of a sale of the company or facilitate TV rights. So why not try to find a loophole around that? Why not try to live vicariously through somebody that was learning under you before you had to basically leave temporarily for 6 to 8 months? I'm just saying. It feels to me that would be if you really want to theorize and speculate and throw conspiracies out there, if you will. I would say that is the most logical one to look at. That Bruce is the one booking, and maybe he's taking ideas Vince is giving him by maybe calling Vince up or something, whatever, and basically applying it to the show, which is why we're feeling Vince-like vibes, and and why we see such a difference between some segments on Raw that we know are Triple H and some that feel like they're Vince, because I think in reality they're Bruce. They're not Vince, they're Bruce. Now, could I be wrong? Like I said, probably. And maybe Triple H is just throwing Vince a bone here and there with the way he books certain things to keep him off the table, keep that temptation away, for a little bit longer. Maybe that's what's going on. We don't know. But like I said, if I'm going to be more logically inclined to point the finger to somebody to where it feels like it's more like Vince, but we know it shouldn't be because of legal reasons, I have to point towards Bruce. That's me. That's just my opinion. But yeah, that's how I look at it. I think it's more Bruce than anything. I think it's Bruce talking to Vince giving Bruce ideas, and Bruce taking credit for it being his idea, but we know it's Vince because it has very familiar Vince vibes. And that's why I think, everybody's feeling it. Because Triple H is leaving Bruce in charge with certain segments on Raw. Not as many on SmackDown, but certain segments on Raw. Maybe sometimes even letting Bruce book all 3 hours of Raw. And Bruce is probably like, yeah, now that I'm in charge for the night of Raw, I'm going to book it the way Vince would book it. Because Vince knows what he's doing, not Triple H. So I wouldn't be surprised. So again, that's just me. I mean, I know people have other conspiracy thoughts and theories, and they have a right to that. But to me, I think it's more along the lines of that when Bruce gets an opportunity to run things, thanks to Triple H, certain segments or even entire 3-hour Raws, I think he's doing it. I think when he gets that opportunity, he does it in the vein of Vince. Does it in a very similar vein that Vince would, because he learned from Vince and he probably misses how Vince runs things. So this is his way of saying, hey, I'm going to make things the way Vince would do it because Vince should still be here. But again, that's just mere speculation and theory theorizing from my, and that's main, hold on. Well, like I was saying, that almost got tongue-tied there. But like I said, that's just a mere theory, speculation, conspiracy thought on my part. But what about you guys? Do you think I'm onto something? Or do you think maybe, it's not Bruce and maybe Vince has found a loophole to do, get some creative, input himself? Once again, or get creative bookings himself somehow. What are your thoughts? I think, honestly, if you want to point the finger towards anybody, it's got to be Bruce, in my opinion. It's just my opinion. But what are your thoughts? Let me know down below in the comments as well as in the live chat during the premiere. Like the video. Check me out at my Teespring store by clicking the upper left-hand corner on the screen here if you're watching on YouTube. You know where to find me. Venmo at Brian-Warmer-2, Cash App at BWRoses98, DeviantArt.com/BVW1979, Vimo at BWRoses, BWRoses and all that, as well as Patreon.com/BWRoses. Excuse me there. But guys, give me your thoughts. Do you think I'm onto something? Let me know down below in the comments, as well as in the live chat during the premiere. And until next time, I am out.